Hello everyone and welcome back to the World War II Solitaire board game channel. So today we're gonna do our very first proper review, and we're gonna be reviewing One Page World War II Tank War Ardennes. So first of all, I haven't really done many reviews or any at all. I did the D-Day Dice, every expansion a review, but those were actually more like previews because I merely just presented the content of the expansions and just went into a little bit of detail of how they worked, but no real opinions because most of the components, most of the modules I haven't actually played yet. I just felt like there needed to be more direction in what is included in each of those numerous expansions. And then I did my top 5 World War II solo game video, which kind of was like 5-minute reviews of my top 5 games. And that video got a lot of views and people appreciated it, so I thought maybe, okay, let's do a proper review. And I guess why I haven't done them, because there's actually quite a lot of work to them, because you really gotta play the game a lot and you gotta sit down and think about your opinions of the game, and that can also be a little bit dodgy because you don't want to offend anyone. You don't want to offend fans of the game. You don't want to offend the designer and publisher of the game, so that can also be a little bit tricky. We have seen some reviews on other solitaire war game channels that haven't been received very good. But of course, there's two sides to that. But anyway, enough of me babbling. We're gonna look at One Page World War II Tank War Ardennes, and there's actually a reason why I start doing the review of this game. It's because it's a simple game, so I thought that would be a good way for me to start off my reviewing with, instead of a big heavy game. Anyway, One Page World War II Tank War Ardennes is a game that simulates tank combat for an individual tank in the Battle of the Bulge. It's very arcade-like. It's a very light game. It's designed by Noah Patterson and released by or published by Micro RPG. This specific game, I bought this one through Amazon, so that's the deal with this one. It has several different releases, and all of these releases, they have different strengths and different downsides to them. So I have covered this game before on my channel. I played the print and play version, which you can get off Wargame Vault for $2.99. This is the soft cover sold through Amazon for $9.99, and then there is also a hardcover one for $19.99. There is also I believe there was a Game Crafter version planned, which would include several different colored dice. It would include miniatures and stuff like that. I found the page on the Game Crafter, but it's never been marked as available to order. So I think that was basically just in the plans, and maybe we'll see that someday, a proper retail version with a box and everything like that. But now, as I'm making this video, there is only the softcover, hardcover, and the print and play version. This specific review is gonna be focused on the softcover one, but I am also briefly gonna speak about the print and play version and the different strengths and which one I would recommend you to get. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So One Page World War II Tank War Ardennes, with its 7 pages of rules, is a light game which takes you 20 to 60 minutes to play, depending on how you do, of course. It is a roll and write game, meaning you are going to have to do some writing and drawing, and I would recommend using a pencil and an eraser, or one of those flexi pens where you can actually erase stuff with, because if you are doing writing instead of miniatures, there will be moments where you might have to backtrack, and drawing your tank again can get a little bit confusing, drawing new enemies, so I would recommend that. The game consists of 1 turn for every area, and we have 15 areas. The goal of the game is to liberate as many areas as possible, and In many of the sessions, the game will end before we are able to liberate them all. The game ends when we have liberated the last area, if our tank is destroyed, or if we have no road connecting to a new area. To set up the game, start in the bottom right corner. Either draw a tank, or if you use miniatures, or markers, put the mini or the marker there. Now it's time to assign our tank stats. To do this, we roll a 1d6. We split that in half and round it up and assign different stats. These stats represent the size of our gun, the skill of our gunner, our crew's combat skill, and our tank's armor, also our commander's skill. I gotta say that the randomness of this is something that I'm not a fan of, because this means that some games will be quite easy and other will be quite difficult, and you don't have any control of that. It's just a matter of how high you roll or how low you roll during the setup of the game. I would much more have preferred if you would play the game campaign-wise and level up with your crew ratings and gun ratings and so on as you go. So the sequence of play will take us through 7 different steps for each turn of the game. First, we roll 1d6 for weather. This is quite simple. Bad weather gives us bad combat effects, like being more likely to miss with the main gun, and good weather gives us good combat effects, like, for example, 1 extra grit dice. Then you choose which way to go. This is the second part out of 7, north, west, so on. The third step is to generate a road. You roll 1d6 and you draw the area that you have generated. The fourth step is to roll a d6 again for terrain, just like weather, except there's no positive effects. And then you draw that terrain. Then you spot for enemies. You roll 1d6 and you generate the enemies. And you draw the enemies or use miniatures for them. Step number 6 is combat, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later. The last step is rolling for supplies, and this is only valid if you just liberated a town or a city. Now you can receive hearts, that's healing your tank, ammo, engineer tools, stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit more about combat, because combat in this game is a little bit complicated at first. Once you get a hang of it, it's gonna make more sense, but in the beginning, yeah, it can be a little bit complicated. So combat is divided into 4 steps. And the first step, we are gonna roll for initiative. So we are trying to roll equal or lower than our grit stat. And remember, the grit stat is whatever we roll during the setup of the game. We roll for our 4 different stats. So we are trying to roll again equal or lower than our grit stat. We will roll as many dice as we have unmarked stars. However, we also apply the different modifiers from the enemy difficulty level, the area type, and the terrain. All of those can remove or give dice to us. Actually, only the weather can give dice to us. The other ones will remove dice. So for example, if we roll 2 German pillboxes in an ice terrain with sunny weather, the German pillboxes will remove 1 grit dice, the sunny weather will grant 1 grit dice, and the icy terrain will remove 1 grit dice. The final result is -1 grit dice. So we will now roll the stars that we have left under our grit status -1. As the game progresses, you can use these grit stars for different actions. For example, you can use a grit star to roll 1 extra attack dice when attacking, and if it hits, you score 2 hits. And most importantly, you can build roads if you have dead ends. So when you do this, you mark off a star, effectively giving you 1 less roll in the future when rolling for initiative. So step 2 is bombardment combat, and this is when all tank units will attack. So that's you and enemy units. So enemy units are divided into tanks and regular units. Panzer IVs and Tigers are tank units and will attack during the bombardment combat step. So this is step 2 again. Other units will attack during regular combat, that's step 3, and we're gonna get to that as well. So you will attack in both bombardment and regular combat. And if you're having combat versus tank and you succeeded the initiative roll during step 1, you will start to attack. However, if you did not succeed the first step, the initiative roll with your grit stat, the enemy tanks will start to attack. Since regular enemy units do not fight in the bombardment step, you will always start to attack if fighting these units, even if you lost initiative roll during the first step. Firing this step is very much like when we roll for initiative with our grit stat, except now we are trying to roll equal or lower than our gun stat. We roll as many dice as there are unmarked hearts under the gun stat. And remember to add any modifiers from the enemy difficulty level, weather, or terrain. If the enemy fires first now, because we would have, fight panzers or tigers and lost the initiative roll, or if we fire first but enemies survive, we will roll for defense. Again, in the very same way as initiative and attack, but we are trying to roll average or lower than our armor stat. If we fail, we have to fill a heart. And it's the player's choice whether to fill a heart out of armor, gun, or crew. So we don't have to fill an armor heart, which you might think. And this means in the future, whatever we choose, we will have one less die roll for that we filled out a heart from. So if we fill out a heart from the gun stat, that effectively means that we will have one less die to roll when fighting during the bombardment step with our gun. Okay, so now we get to step 3. Step 3 is regular combat. Our tank crew and regular units will attack. If you lost initiative step, the enemy will begin. If you won, you begin. And yes, that means that you will attack twice before the enemy gets to react if you are fighting infantry and you won the initiative roll during the first step. Now we're trying to roll lower or equal to our crew stat. So this represents our crew fighting outside of the tank with small arms fire like Thompson machine guns, the M3 grease gun, and so on. Step 4 out of 4 is check victory. Did any side win? Otherwise, repeat from step 1. So I hope you followed my description of the combat. If you felt like it was a little bit confusing, that's okay, because guess what? That is also how I felt during the first sessions of the game. That's also how I feel sometimes when I get back to this game and I haven't played it for a while, because it's so abstracted and it doesn't really feel logical, but you will get used to it. So that is basically the game. We're going to repeat this fighting process or the generation process for each of the areas. We have 15 areas. We generate an area, weather, terrain, enemies, and we fight. And sometimes there's not even going to be any enemies. So then we keep going, until we have lost our tank, or we have generated all of the areas, or we have run into a dead end. We have no more grit to build any more roads. So what do I like with this game and what do I not like? I think it's a really fun game. It's perfect for short sessions when you don't really have the brain power to play something more deep. It is very light. It does become repetitive after a while, but it is a simple game, so that is usually what happens with the simple games. I really like the idea with the difficulty setting. You can go for easy or normal difficulty level. I think difficulty level is a great way for solo games to give you that feeling of achievement as you are progressing towards higher difficulty levels. However, the easy is way too easy in this game, so I would have liked to see more difficulty levels, because the only ones we have is really easy and normal. I also like the victory levels and awards. So there are 5 different victory levels, which will give players an incentive to keep playing. There are also 5 different medals you can get. It's not really bad for a simple game. What do I not like with this game? Or what don't I like with this game? I feel combat is way too abstracted and it can feel a bit clunky in the beginning. But it will feel more natural as you get used to it. Another thing I don't like is the game often ends with not your tank being destroyed, but actually with ends with no roads, dead roads. You have no more grit to build any more roads, and that also feels a little bit not cool. I would have liked it to, you know, at least get to clean a house or you die. Just running out of roads, it feels a little bit like an anti-climax. I also think it's a little bit weird that the first roll, not the initiative roll, but the roll for stats during setup of the game will decide the difficulty more than the actual difficulty level setting. I mean, if you roll for and get really bad stats, well, you're going to have a hard game. If you get really good stats, you're going to have an easy game, no matter if you choose easy or normal difficulty level. Like I said, this is a very light game, and usually the way solo games work in my experience, the more complex they are, the less meaningful play choices we have. That being said, I think the designer has increased the meaningful choices in a very clever manner using the grit rule. I think that's an innovative way of, you know, with this very simple game, you're going to have to make tough choices when to use that grit. Also, another thing, when you take damage, you're going to have to, it's going to be really tough every time deciding, do I want to put the damage on my gun, my crew, or my armor? Usually you will not choose the gun, but the tough question will be, will you use your armor or crew? One thing we haven't covered is also we are going to have some extra shells and ammo and tracks, which we also can use to reroll if we really get a bad result. For example, if we fire during the bombardment and roll horribly, we can use shells, and we will have 3 shells. So each time we use it, we remove 1, and we get to reroll as many dice as we want. We can keep the good ones and reroll the bad ones. And I think this is also a very good way to give the player some choice and meaningful decisions in a simple game. This kind of push your luck, you know. If you rolled really bad, it's going to be quite obvious that you're going to want to use the bombardment shell if you're meeting a lot of, dangerous enemies. But again, I think it's a clever way of giving a simple game meaningful player choices. So this is a game that I will be playing when I'm traveling mostly. It could also be a game, for when I'm working night shift. Again, when you don't have time or really the brain power for something heavy. So would I recommend it, and what is the value of the game? Well, if you're into light games and armored World War II combat, for the value of, the price of $3 for a print and play, you can't really go wrong. Also for $10, I would recommend this game for the soft cover. I think, you have 100 sessions to play. That's 10 cents per game. $20 is a little bit too much for what it is, in my opinion. But again, that's a highly subjective opinion, which reviews, of course, are. So if you really want to have the hardcover version and you got the cash to spend, go ahead. Anyway, guys, that marks the end of my very first review on this channel. I hope you liked it, and feel free to give me constructive criticism on this review. Maybe something I can learn for the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, guys, like and comment. Also, if you really like my work, you can become a member of the channel for only $2.99 a month, or you can do a one-time donation. You'll find my PayPal address in the video description, or you can use YouTube's Super Thanks. Thank you for watching. See you soon.